Welcome. We have two guests today that are very special, that are debating the topic, did Jesus rise from the dead? They are Dr. Anthony Flew, considered by many to be the world's foremost philosophical atheist, a man who has authored more than 23 books, including Hume's Philosophy of Belief, God in Philosophy, Introduction to Western Philosophy, The Presumption of Atheism, and other philosophical essays on God, freedom, and immortality. My second guest is Dr. Gary Habermas, a renowned Christian philosopher and historian who's considered to be, by many, the foremost expert on the evidence, the historical evidence for Jesus' resurrection. Gary's authored 21 books, including The Historical Jesus, Ancient Evidence for the Life of Christ, In Defense of Miracles, and Why Believe God Exists. Gentlemen, we're glad that you are here. And Dr. Habermas, I think the people that are watching right now, we're talking about, did Jesus rise from the dead? They're saying, come on. I mean, you're saying there's evidence, there's facts in history. When you see magazines like Newsweek and Time that come out every 6-8 months, it seems, here's another one on visions of Jesus. You've got all kinds of stuff in these magazines, but they keep on saying there's very little evidence. Now, you come along and you write this little book called The Historical Jesus, and all of a sudden, you talk about the fact that when you were at Michigan State working on your PhD, you were a skeptic yourself, and the fact is the facts brought you to a belief in Jesus. And you have said there are at least 12 historical facts that are virtually agreed by all critical scholars today. I'd like you to let us know what the case is. Start us off tonight.
Well, John, just to name some of those highlights, virtually everybody today thinks that Jesus died due to crucifixion. I mean, John Crossan and others from the Jesus Seminar say that's the most widely known fact in the ancient world. Mm-hmm. He was buried. He, of course, this event inspired some despair in the disciples. Now, the fact that the tomb was empty is admitted by most scholars, but not as widely admitted as the rest in this list. Probably the single most important fact is that the disciples had experiences that they believed were appearances of the risen Jesus. They were transformed as a result. The resurrection was a central message. They preached in Jerusalem. The church was born. We have some individuals like James and Paul, two former skeptics, one a family skeptic, one an outsider who persecuted Christians. And they also came to Christ by experiences that they believed were appearances of the risen Jesus. And by the way, there's a lot of other scholars today in the historical Jesus movement, way far to the left of me, who also start with lists of facts just like this as sort of a common ground from which we can deal with our data.
Mm-hmm. Now, Tony, what do you think about Habermas's facts there?
Well, I don't dispute those facts, but I want to say yes, but. And the evidential situation is in many ways very unsatisfactory. For a start, no one knows in what year the crucial event of the crucifixion and consequently the other events occurred. And this is a very remarkable thing, that no one knows the birth date. Well, there are a great many birth dates of important people that are not known. The other thing lack is all our evidence is based on documents written by believing Christians, none of whom was himself an eyewitness. And we have absolutely nothing from the rest of the population of Jerusalem to tell us why it was they weren't converted and whether the earthquakes and other alleged miracles actually occurred or not.
Well, what do you think about that, Gary?
Well, now when you say there's none of these early Christian authors are eyewitnesses, of course, I think from your writings you exempt Paul, right? You believe the Apostle Paul wasn't an eyewitness.
I was thinking of the gospel writers.
Right, but with Paul we have an authentic eyewitness, and you would grant a number of authentic Pauline books.
Oh, yeah.
And,
but he wasn't in Jerusalem, of course, at that time.
Well, shortly afterwards, of course, he was there when Stephen was stoned. But And also, I would disagree about the extra-biblical data. I think we do have extra-biblical data for most everything. I will say that everything on that factual list that I gave, everything except probably the despair of the disciples, which is a good psychological fact, but all the rest of them can be established through Paul alone. And, but I think the majority of them can also be witnessed to in ancient extra-biblical literature.